A wrestling legend has called for Jim Cornette to make his AEW debut, and has Tony Khan just hinted at a CM Punk AEW return. But first, let's get to the quickfire headlines, as last night Major League Wrestling were at their annual Battle Riot event, which was headlined by the 40-man Battle Royal for a future shot at the World Heavyweight Champion. Killer Kross, Real One, the former Enzo Amore, Sami Callihan and Jacob Fatu would make up the final four, though it would come down to Fatu and Real One in the final two. Enzo would manage to throw his opponent over the top rope, but his feet would land on the steps and not the floor, allowing the Samoan to climb back into the ring to score the win. For those wondering how Killer Kross, the now Karrion Kross, was able to appear, the show would actually be taped in late June before he made his WWE return. Impact Wrestling are in the midst of an X Division Championship tournament for the currently vacant belt, with the semi-finalists now being confirmed. First, PJ Black would defeat Yuya Uemura to advance through to the next round, where he meets Black Taurus. And finally, Speedball Mike Bailey would defeat former champion Kenny King to earn a match against Trey Miguel, with them just one step away from the final. This week, AEW would confirm the signing of third-generation promoter Jeff Jarrett, and not only does he have an on-screen role, but he'll work backstage as the Director of Business Development, this in the live events department. This has led fans to wonder if AEW house shows are on the horizon, something Dave Meltzer provided an update on in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and he would write, "Right now there are no definite plans for AEW to do house shows, but a lot of wrestlers on the roster would like to wrestle more and have expressed an interest in them." Absent WWE superstars Naomi and Sasha Banks were scheduled to appear at Vulture Festival next weekend, although a scheduling conflict has led to them being pulled from the show. This has led to speculation of an impending WWE return, with Vulture Fest noting, "This notification is a Vulture Festival event update. Due to an unforeseen scheduling conflict, Mercedes Varnado and Trinity Fatu are no longer able to participate in their event on Saturday, November 12th at 8 p.m. Whether or not this means anything regarding a return to the ring remains to be seen, but it certainly got fans talking. And speaking of returns, the Elite's AEW return would once again be hinted at this week on Dynamite, with another Delete the Elite vignette airing on the show. According to PW Insider, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks were once again backstage this week at Dynamite, with this being the second week in a row that they've been in attendance following the conclusion of the internal investigation into the AEW All Out backstage brawl. And speaking of that, a witness of the AEW All Out backstage incident has spoken out. As everyone knows by now, there was a fight backstage after AEW All Out 2022, and CM Punk, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks were suspended, whilst Ace Steel was fired from the company. We've heard many accounts of what happened in the locker room that night via leaks to the dirt sheets, however nobody has spoken publicly about it beyond a no comment. Well, that has now changed, as speaking on his Extreme Life podcast this week, AEW wrestler Matt Hardy would discuss the matter with his co-host John Alba, as well as the upcoming return of the Elite. Hardy would reveal that he saw the fight take place and gave his thoughts on the incident based on his first-person perspective, and he would say, "It's going to be very interesting to see the Elite back, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. I'm very happy they are back. I will say this right here and right now, those guys didn't do anything wrong in this situation. If anything, they were the victims. I'm telling you that from a first-person perspective. I was there, I witnessed it all. I love all three of those guys. I've known Matt and Nick forever. I've just gotten to know Kenny while working with AEW. I'm very happy they are returning to TV and they are back in the mix. They deserve to be in the mix." Matt would then discuss what he said to the Elite when he saw them backstage for the first time since the incident, and gave his thoughts on their importance to the promotion, and he would add, "When I saw them yesterday, I said, it's so good to see you guys are the heart and soul of AEW. The Elite in many ways are the identity of AEW. Without those guys, you don't have AEW as it is right now. Tony Khan may have started a wrestling company in some capacity, but All Elite Wrestling, those guys are the identity of AEW. It's very important to have them back." Whilst it's unknown when the Elite will return, vignettes have begun to air to hype up their impending appearance. Interestingly, the theme of the video has been Delete the Elite, leading to some fans to think that broken Matt Hardy could be involved in the return in some way, but the use of his trademark catchphrase could just be a sheer coincidence. Next up, a wrestling legend has called for Jim Cornette to make his AEW debut. Jim Cornette has emerged as one of the most divisive figures in modern wrestling, with his podcasts helping build up a cult-like following, while simultaneously making him one of the most loathed figures in the business. He has established himself as the most notorious critic of all elite wrestling, fueled by his dislike for many of the talents on the roster, as well as what he feels is their sometimes less serious approach to the sport. Whilst chatting about the build to the Montreal Screwjob this week on his Foley is Pod podcast, WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley would take a moment to discuss Jim Cornette's hate for AEW and called for the two parties to turn this into a heat-seeking angle, pleading for Cornette to become all elite. And he would say, "Can we take a moment for me to just suggest to Jimmy, who still loves wrestling and is one of the finest managers our business has ever known, please do a stint in AEW. Please show up on the air, give your tutelage to someone on that roster or a couple of people on that roster. I know you hate the company, but you love the business." It's like Tommy Lasorda in that commercial was trying to get the Cubs fan out of the tree. And he's like, "I know you love the Cubs, but you love baseball more. Come on and watch the World Series." Like Jimmy, this is almost like we talked in last week's episode about the lack of push for Becky Lynch actually serving as the build to her turn. Jimmy Cornette talking truth. He might hate AEW, but he doesn't hate everybody in AEW, and could you imagine the type of heat? You'd have to go back in time 30 years or more to get that type of heat. I think it would be tremendous. I think 6 weeks is all we ask. 6 weeks, Jimmy, 6 weeks. You owe it to the business. I actually put a poll on the community post about this topic earlier today to gauge how this would be received by the fan base, and so far, most people are in favour of it. In fairness to Cornette, there are some aspects and certain talents within AEW that he does enjoy, with perhaps FTR, Powerhouse Hobbs, or even the Briscoes being the perfect candidates to be his clients were it to happen. With that said though, it does seem extremely unlikely due to not only his heat with the EVPs of the company and most of the locker room, but also his refusal to leave his house after the pandemic. AEW President Tony Khan has stated publicly that he looked up to Jim growing up and respects his opinion, and even tried to bring him in the early days of the company, and if he were to sign him, he could probably learn a lot from having him around, but I wouldn't bank on it actually happening. And next up has Tony Khan just hinted at a CM Punk AEW return. CM Punk has been absent from AEW ever since September 4th after his world title win over Jon Moxley in the main event of the show, and not only would he be injured, he would be suspended from the company after a verbal tirade during the post-show media scrum before ending up in a fight with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. If reports are to be believed, Punk is currently negotiating a buyout of his AEW contract, with there said to be some interest in WWE for talks with their former world champion. With that said, we have a few interesting notes on this rollercoaster story that could suggest he is in fact staying put. Last night, new CM Punk merchandise would drop on shopaew.com with a Christmas tree bauble available donning the face of the straight edge superstar. This is the first time AEW have released a new CM Punk themed item since his suspension following the AEW All Out backstage incident, although it's worth noting they continue to sell old merchandise on the site. For what it's worth, he is also still front and center of the marketing for the AEW Fight Forever console game, although it's unknown if it will stay that way as the release date draws closer. Another interesting note regarding CM Punk comes from Stephen Mulhausen of DAZN, who has discussed both the Colt Cabana return on AEW Dynamite this week, which many felt was a dig at the absent Punk, as well as Tony Khan's mention of him on Busted Open Radio prior to the show, and Stephen would tweet, "Confirmed PW Insiders report that Colt Cabana's appearance on AEW Dynamite was nothing more than a one-off. Also told it wasn't a shot at CM Punk, who was brought up yesterday by Tony Khan on Busted Open Radio, and that wasn't an accident." On Busted Open Radio, Khan would hype up the prestige of the ROH World Championship, running through a list of wrestlers that have held the gold, name-dropping the likes of AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, Claudio Castagnoli, Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens, and CM Punk. What Steven means by saying that this wasn't an accident still remains unclear, with speculation building that he could be WWE bound should he negotiate his way out of his AEW contract. Perhaps Khan is trying to hint that the relationship is healthier than fans may think. But hey, again, this is all reading between the lines. I think most fans' preference, including mine, would be for Punk to return to AEW in order to turn this real-life incident into an angle with the Elite that could result in some of the most gripping television in recent wrestling history, but his future is anyone's guess at this point. Now going back to the Colt Cabana appearance on AEW Dynamite last night, Dave Meltzer would reveal in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that it was Tony Khan's idea and was designed to boost morale in the locker room, and he would write, We were told that this was more for the locker room than anything else, that having Cabana on the show and giving a positive spotlight after months of being ostracized for reasons that had nothing to do with him was a dressing room morale booster since he had many friends there. If reports are to be believed, Colt won't be returning to AEW on a regular basis, although he is seemingly well thought of amongst the roster. As for Punk, his future remains as hazy as ever, although a recent Fightful report noted that he apparently still has the wrestling bug, a good sign for fans that waited 7 years for his return to the business. And before you go, make sure you check out 10 masked AEW wrestlers unmasked.